One of the biggest mysteries in the entire world of One Piece was just confirmed. I powers are real, and they didn't come from who everyone expected. It wasn't Mihawk. It wasn't Cavendish. It was a girl trapped inside a block of ice, who might be able to see the exact path to Laugh-Tale. And here's the scary part. Imu has known this for 60 years. If that's true, Zoro has been carrying the same secret under that closed eye for years, and nobody noticed. Let me give you the context first, because chapter 1186 dropped way too much information on us at once. For years, the community speculated about eye powers in One Piece. The whole basis for that was always Mihawk, his intense yellow eyes, the nickname Hawkeyes, and the way characters like Cavendish, Perona, and even Zanatia seemed to have some strange connection to that kind of piercing gaze. But chapter 1186 didn't confirm any of that through Mihawk. The confirmation came from Shuri, the same Shuri we've seen being controlled by the world government, who carries a rare heterochromia, the so-called bipolar eyes. The chapter is, in fact, a heavy flashback. It opens with the government's attack on the kingdom of Espria, soldiers fighting to survive, and Brook still in shock seeing the king's dead body in front of his own daughter, Shuri. Brook screams for help, remembering everything he shared with the king, the man who changed his life. But in the middle of it all, Imu's silhouette appears in the room. And that's when it hits us. The dome reverse was always there. Imu was always watching. But here's the part most people skip right past. Shuri, completely emotionless, tells Brook that the man in front of him was already dead before he even hit the ground. And that's when the twist comes. Shuri is, in fact, a celestial dragon. King Reuben was never her biological father. But that's where things start getting strange. According to Shuri, the king lied to the entire kingdom. The world government never wanted 1,000 slaves. They wanted the king to hand her, Shuri, over to marry Geoise. If the king died, the war would end. She's the one who took that burden on herself. And this is where we meet Shuri's real biological father, Saint Gro, a celestial dragon who recognizes Brook only because there was always a curly-haired brat running around among the servants. A tiny detail, but one that completely changes how we read this scene. But the reason Imu went after Shuri isn't random. Saint Gro mentions that her bipolar eyes are extremely rare to be born with, and that Imu personally requested that exact trait. And here's the detail almost nobody talked about. Saint Gro has heterochromia, too. When he brings it up, he's immediately warned. You're saying too much. A direct line coming from inside the celestial dragon's own structure. The kind of line that usually hides something huge. And there's more. Brook, training with Shuri later, mentions that it looked like she could see the future. Honestly, my first thought was advanced conqueror's haki. But think about it. We've never seen anyone master that kind of haki so naturally, as a child, with zero training. And that's where a piece of trivia most people forgot comes in. The original character drafts, Mihawk's working name was literally, the clairvoyant, someone who perceives beyond normal senses, including the future. Add to that the fact that Brook survived a sword going straight through his skull, missing every major blood vessel and the brainstem. Coincidence? Or did Shuri's consciousness, even under dome reverse control, still manage to guide that blade with the precision no ordinary person could pull off? And this might be the biggest clue Oda has ever left. The term used for her heterochromia, bipolar eyes, isn't a random translation choice. It echoes straight back to the theory that the world's poles are inverted, and the idea that the 4 red poneglyphs point to a true polar star used as a guide to the final island. Okay, I put the pieces together now, because on their own, they just look like trivia. Together, they form something much bigger. First point, the archipelago where Roger was born, home to Logtown, is called Polestar Polar Star, and the name of the final island in the log poses is Lod Star, another name for the polar star, used for guidance during our own real-world age of sail. Second point, the 4 red poneglyphs have always been treated as literal coordinates to Laugh-Tale. But what if they're not coordinates in the literal sense? What if they're confirmation that a real guide star exists? something that can only be read by a very specific kind of eye. Third point, and maybe the most important one, Shuri turned 15 exactly when the mysterious mist destroyed Espria's economy and forced the confrontation that led to her being handed over. 15 is the same age at which Poseidon's power to control the Sea Kings awakens. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. The world government, and by extension Aimu, is watching children with very specific bloodlines, waiting for the exact moment a power awakens. And here's the interesting part. That mist, according to the chapter itself, carries Marcus Mars's signature. That kind of weather event simply doesn't happen naturally on the Grand Line. It was conjured. It was a weapon used specifically to force Shuri's surrender, after Reuben and Candle resisted. There's also a line that connects directly to this. When King Reuben tells Shuri not to go fight, he says specifically, "If you're captured." All of this was for nothing. He wasn't talking about the kingdom. He knew, the whole time, that she was the real target. So, what do these eyes actually do? My theory, it's not just seeing the future. It could be an eye genetically adapted to read ancient kingdom technology, literally seeing what's behind the curtain. One-piece version of the Matrix. And if that's true, Aimu's motive for wanting Shuri becomes obvious. He's not after a seer. He's after a living map. But here's the detail nobody's talking about enough. The world government has a recurring, very specific obsession, bringing children to marry Geoes. Bonnie, Shuri, the giant children from Punk Hazard, Shanks and Shanks Rock, taken by Saint Gro from God's Valley. And now, in this flashback, children tied to an event from 800 years ago. First, I thought it was just about building soldiers. But that doesn't explain the level of effort, resources, and secrecy involved in every single one of these cases. And here's the detail nobody talks about enough. What if it's connected to Aimu's own immortality? We still don't know the full truth behind that. Are children important for their life force? Their youth? Or, and this is where it gets heavy, as a possible vessel for a body swap? Suddenly, a completely different picture starts to form. Because if Aimu needs young bodies, or specific bloodlines capable of awakening ancient kingdom powers, that reframes everything. Bonnie wasn't an isolated case. Shanks wasn't chosen at random. And Shuri, with those eyes, might be the piece that finally explains the whole pattern. And it's at exactly this moment, within the chapter itself, that the most iconic scene of the week happens. Locke, enraged, prepares to strike Aimu with his hammer, and before he can, Luffy appears behind him and lands a punch straight to Locke's face. I genuinely don't know how I didn't see that coming. Luffy, literally stepping into the middle of an 800-year-old war, interrupting the exact cycle Aimu built to keep the giants under control. Now think about the scale of what this unlocks going forward. If the bipolar eyes really can read the true guide, Star, that changes the entire race to Laughtail. It wouldn't be about physically collecting the 4 red poneglyphs anymore. It would be about having someone who can actually read the path. That makes Shuri, currently trapped in that block of ice, one of the most valuable living characters for the entire ending of the series. Think about Elbaf too. If the giants really did betray Joy Boy 800 years ago, and the mural itself contradicts what the giants claim today about never allying with anyone, that means the Straw Hats' arrival in Elbaf isn't just about a warrior's feast anymore. It's about confronting a historical shame the giants have been hiding from themselves for centuries. You now know something even the giants themselves are trying to hide. And for the Revolutionary Army, if the world government has been hunting children of specific bloodlines for decades, that gives new weight to everything Dragon and the organization have been doing, because protecting them stops being just ideology. It becomes a race against the clock. And Luffy's role in all this, he just literally punched an 800-year-old warrior in the face to stop history from repeating itself. That's not just a hype clip moment. It's the story flat out telling us that Luffy is the breaking point in the cycle Aimu has been running since the Void Century. Now, put it all together. Shuri's bipolar eyes, Mihawk's original name, the Clairvoyant, Polestar, and Lodestar pointing to the same guide star, the government's obsession with children of specific bloodlines, and Aimu, who personally requested that exact genetic trait 60 years ago. That's not a pile of random trivia. That's a pattern Oda's been planting long before we ever noticed. Personally, I think Oda has been building to this since he first introduced the term red poneglyph, because coordinates with no one able to read the path never fully made sense on their own. And if I'm right, the moment they confirm the bipolar eyes are the real key to Laugh Tale is going to break the fandom. How did we never notice this before? Because Oda hid it inside a scrapped character name, translation nickname, and an island naming coincidence nobody had connected until now. If this theory is right, it completely changes how we read every chapter from here to the end, especially anything involving Mihawk and Zoro's closed eye. But I want to know what you think. Do you think Oda planned this from the very beginning? Or is this just one giant coincidence? Drop your theory in the comments. And if you want to go deeper into the connection between Aimu and the Void Century, the next video is linked right here.